now I have the pleasure of introducing Simon George. Simon's going to come up and have a quick yarn about what his business does here in Australia, tell a bit of the Simon George and Sons story, and answer some questions that we've given him. And then after Simon's spoken, Rich and Simon, I know, have got burning questions for one another, so I think they're probably going to put each other on the spot just a bit. And it's time for you after that to ask these guys some questions well. So I know Michael Simonetta really wants to ask both Rich and Simon some things. So get those questions ready, all right? Simon, over to you.
Thank you, Felicity. Thank you, Michael, for asking me to speak today. I think we lost half the room after Joe talked about this side dying of cancer and heart disease. So, our company is now a fourth generation wholesaler of fresh fruit and vegetables, and we're in the food service industry. So in one way, I was the third generation, so I escaped the third generation losing it. It'll be over to the fourth generation now. I'm out the other side. But I'd like to talk about the formula for success in our business before I go on to talk about the food service industry. And prior to the floods, we were about 1.5 years in front of our forecast of 1 million kilos a week in our company for fruit and vegetables around Australia. So something we're doing is right. And in our business, the key performance indicators are, and not in any order, wastage. We monitor our wastage very carefully. We know to the percent what our wastage is. So people would say quality, but we look at wastage is a big deal for us. Margin, it's no good if you're getting, a large margin, but you're giving it all back in rebate, or if you're doing 7 deliveries a day to the same client. So we look at margin. Annual leave is one of our 6 key indicators, which is, people look at me when I say that and they go, they can't understand that, but we encourage our staff to take their annual leave. We monitor it monthly. A key example was, one of our senior employees for years was concerned about taking annual leave because the old theory was, well, your job wouldn't be there when you came back. But we managed to talk John into taking his annual leave, and we actually encouraged him and helped find places for him to take his leave. And it was a classic example of him enjoying a better lifestyle now, and his wife is, grateful for our encouragement and promising John a better way, or showing him a better way. So that follows right throughout our company now. So annual leave, believe it or not, we monitor that very carefully, and if there's some sneaking out, you wonder about the manager, whether he's worried about how well he's managing, but it's a big deal for us. Ethos is one of our key indicators. If there's about 8 of us in the key management team, there's 300 staff altogether, but 8 of us sort of run the show, and if the ethos, if I'm screaming at those guys, then you expect them to scream at their staff. Each one has about 30 or 40 people. So we very much encourage respect from the bottom down. We don't demand it, we earn it. And I think that's a big difference in our company. And on that 8 key people, I think that if it took me a while in life to work out that my mother, my daughter, and my wife were a lot smarter than me, and having 4 sons as well, the penny dropped, luckily for me a few years ago, but if in 5 years, if half of your senior team aren't female, then your business won't be as smart as it could be. So, these are trends that we know, thank God. It's just lucky probably from my environment that I learnt that. So if we think if we get those key indicators right, the sales will follow. It's a different playing field now post GFC. Prior to that, it was about quality, service, price. Now, unfortunately, it's price, price, price. So if you haven't got the quality or the service, you don't deserve to be a player in the field. So, I think that trend may change when the good times come back, but at the moment, that's the key. That's their field that we're playing in. They're the goalposts, and you've got to play that way. So probably more importantly, those key indicators now are coming to the fore. If we haven't got the right people, we won't be able to be in the space to compete. So to get to that space, to be able to compete, you need the right people. Our salespeople, for example, they don't, you know, their job is not to sell, not to go out and just focus on price. So we encourage them to be innovative. We don't like to be considered the largest player in the field. I don't know if we are or we aren't. I hope we're not, because, you know, any time I've met the largest player trying to sell me something, I always want to meet the second largest player, because that's where the competition is. So, you know, if any of my guys put a tender in front of me to look at and it says we're the largest, it goes straight in the shredder. I'm not used to public speaking, so it's just going to take me a while here. Going forward, talking about food service industry, I think importantly, we need in our industry to encourage youth. And because it's early starts and there's a perception that you need to be, you know, a little bit older because no one else knows enough about fruit and vegetables, is half true. But if we don't teach the young people and we don't grow we like to grow our own. If you don't do that, well, we're not going to have young people, and our industry will die on the vine. So we're lucky enough in Queensland, our hours of start aren't as bad as New South Wales, because they need to get to work earlier because of the traffic situation down there, I suppose, and the population. But you know, to encourage young people, I think in Queensland it would be hard to say, well, we want you to come in at 1 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock at night. So I think youth is an important part of our future. Having said that, we don't, you know, there are horses for courses. Like we're very happy to interview people, whether they're 15 or 65. You know, we don't look at their age in the interview process. So, you know, many of our truck drivers, you'll get a much better truck driver at an older age who doesn't belt the truck around, and that does transform into dollars. So, whilst we need youth, I also don't discriminate about age. So I'm still talking about my business, not the fruit and veggies. The delegation, you know, I think we're successful because we delegate. Ted Turner had a great saying in the States, was lead, follow, or get out of the way. So the thing in our business is, if you're good at selling, you stick to your selling. If you're good at buying, you do your buying. And, you know, those paths don't cross. People are not allowed to cross across each other's paths. And also reinventing yourself as a company, I think, is important. You know, different colours every few years. I think it's healthy to change things around in your office, reinvent the trucks, you know, new vehicles. It's easier in the long term to have clean vehicles, to keep them clean on a longer basis, than it is to service them because they haven't been looked after. So it sounds silly, but it's a lot easier to keep clean trucks, and it's a lot more economical in the long run. So selling more to the food service, I think this is important. Flavour was one thing that Rich mentioned earlier. For example, years ago, you could only buy seeded grapes. Now it's hard to get a seeded grape, so we are following the right trends. People want seedless grapes. I think that in our fruit market, in the market in Queensland, which I know better, although we're in Sydney now, I think the agents there are putting the pressure on the growers to have the varieties that have the right flavours, because if you have a honeydew worth $6, it detracts from the honeydew worth $12 on the market. So it really brings the $12 market back to $8. If those $6 one, or might to $10, but if the $6 ones weren't on the market, I think that you'd see a very firm $10 to $12 market, and you'd get a lot more yield and a better flavour. And those things are what we need in our industry. I'm going to digress for a second, but to get more fruit and vegetables, I've got a really good example which I wanted to tell years ago, and I wanted to tell it today, but I didn't have the right props. But he doesn't know I know, but one of the props has just walked into the room. So I'm going to embarrass him severely and tell a little story, then ask him to come down. But when our 5 children were growing up, my wife was from a fairly large meat-eating family, and they were all built like that. They were, you know, lean, mean, and ate a lot of protein. But when our guys come along with our genes, and we started eating lollies and chocolates and biscuits at home, I started looking at 5 little chubby kids. And I'm in the fruit industry, so I'd come home, but there was lollies and chocolates. It was fantastic, scones, the whole thing. So after a while, I watched the kids, and I thought to myself, and I said to my wife, this is not looking good. We're going to have 5 really big fat kids. So we had the arguments, and I threw all the lollies and the chocolates and biscuits out and replaced it with fresh grapes, oranges, mandarins, fruit. We even had sliced capsicums when the kids came home from school. So there was a major revolt for the first week or two, or three, or even a couple of months. Everyone hated Dad, and, you know, of course, Mum dobbed me in. But if Ben could come down here for 1 second, please. Is he here? He is. Come on down, buddy. This is my eldest son, and this is what you get when you take... Ben runs our Brisbane operation. He's the general manager of our Brisbane operation, responsible for about 80 staff. But what happens, this is how they grow up if you take the biscuits and the cakes off them. Come up here, Benny. Now, I am embarrassing, but it is a true story. No, stand over there so they can see you. So it's true. You know, we all have to do our little bit. And, you know, I know with Ben and his brothers and sister now, if you try to... They obviously binge out from time to time, and he loves 100 rum and cokes. But right now,